is an entire scene assembled in the amazing digital Circus. It's all well and good to make a short animation that consists of 1 or 2 shots, but how can you communicate your vision to an entire team for dozens of shots to bring a whole scene together? Well, in short, it's a lot of work. But I want to give you a rundown of how we do things here at Glitch. I may not give away our entire pipeline, but I will show you a solid workflow foundation if you're thinking of trying to organize something yourself, or if you're simply curious. Once that's done, I also want to break down a handful of shots from episode 6, just to show some great examples of creative solving. Because our team here, tell you what, they are good at creative solving. All right, first things first, we get our voice recording sessions done well in advance. I'm talking months ahead of even pre-production. Voice lines are the one thing that you want 100% locked in because they provide the timing and tone of pretty much everything. We then ask the director, Gooseworks, to help deliver a basic sound pass-through based on the script. This isn't the entire sound design because right now we only need sounds that are important for timing. For example, how many times a gun fires in each shot. This way we know how many times to animate the character pulling the trigger or how many trace lines to show on screen, stuff like that. These basic diegetic sounds inform the pre-production artists when they create the animatic. And if you think about it, the animatic is the first watchable version of the entire episode. An episode is kind of done once you finish the animatic. And what I mean by that is it's basic animation and you can see the director's intent. So you can definitely just watch it and enjoy the episode. But animation itself is all about refinement and improvement, like any artistic piece. It's one of the hard things about making art in general, I feel. Unlike other professions or industries, there's no finite end. An accountant is done once the figures add up, a mechanical engineer is done once the science checks out, but an artist just stops refining their work at some point. Anyway, I digress. We do our animatics in 2D because we're trying to hit those exaggerated cartoony poses. And the best way to match those poses is, to draw them in 2D. Now, it's very possible to just do basic mood boards for an animatic and then skip straight to the next process of layout in 3D if you want. When I used to work on the Marvel movies, Disney would focus most of their time on these really refined 3D layouts. It offered a faster turnaround to make changes, but of course, they were also just trying to mimic the real world, so there was no real need for too much 2D. Having said that, though, we often use our 3D environments as backgrounds during the animatic process because it's a lot faster to fill in the mise en scène, because it's a lot faster to fill in the mise en scène and it'll be more accurate for the final image. So even if you're making a 2D animation, I highly recommend learning the basics of 3D and using Blender to build your scene. So then you can at least have your perspective and compositions for each shot easily done. Now, Glitch's pre-production artists who make the 2D animatic also get the monumental task of converting the script into a screenplay. That means interpreting the script and making it into a visual edit. They apply early cinematography ideas and split the script up into separate shots, focusing on, pacing and the general feel of things. Each shot is then also given a unique identifying code. So then we can break down what characters are needed for each setup, what props are seen, what environment is being used, and what departments will be needed to finish the shot off. These labels can be anything really, as simple as shot 1, 2, 3, etc. Just make sure that they're on the shot and people can see them. Once the animatic is done, we then have a very early first pass of 3D animation done by our layout artist for the layout stage. They convert the 2D boards into a fully fleshed out 3D cinematic screenplay edit, giving us final 3D cameras and environment placement, as well as a few keyframes of character animation too, just to help establish the composition. Now animation finally has everything they need to start really refining their work. And this is often one of the longest parts of production for any given episode. Animation is complicated. It takes time and it can be influenced by other elements in the shot like simulations or motion graphics that are composited on top. So we make sure all department leads are in a meeting to watch each scene before we start production on an episode, just to give estimates on how complex the work may be for their teams. From here on out, it's just a matter of open communication. Everyone works together and offers advice and notes via draw-overs on routine renders, and our champion coordinators make sure everyone sees the information that's relevant to them. We all make notes, we address those notes, we re-render, and we show everyone. Then the process repeats as many times as is needed until there are no more notes. Each episode has a dozen or so scenes, so we really just repeat this process for however many scenes we have. Then we time lock the episode and send it over to music and sound for their final input. Color grading also takes place at the same time, but then all of a sudden everyone's done and bam, you've got yourself a fully animated long-form episode. Now, let's look at some standout shots here in episode 6 that provide some great production examples. Each shot has its own unique problems that needs its own unique solutions. And every episode has a handful of shots that are standouts to get done.
Now, you know what
Let's start off with the assuming shot here from Kane. It's a very quick example of animators working with an element that's not really finalized. However, by sticking to the original composition from the boards, animation was able to put their own text in and compositing was able to make everything line up really well. Like I said, it's a simple example, but it just reiterates on how important it is for every department to stick to the boards all throughout production. Okay, so having said that, here is a rare example of not following the boards. Initially, visual effects followed this effect to a T, as per normal. The sparkle dust from the butterfly floated towards Ragatha, just like it's shown in the animatic. But upon review, we actually decided that, we can actually just have it fall down instead. It's a small detail, but it was important to make the shot, feel right.
It's a butterfly. And this is a loaded gun.
Oh boy.
Now, this quote-unquote 2D section was actually a bit of a head-scratcher when the department leads had their original meeting. It could have fallen into multiple stages of production. We didn't quite know. We were originally thinking of getting some traditional 2D animation made for it until, wouldn't you know it, the legend himself, Mr. Kevin Temmer, put up his hand and said, let me try something. The next day, he handed this proof of concept over asking, what do we think? Look at this. How do you even do that? If you haven't followed Kevin on his YouTube channel or his socials yet, do yourself a favor and subscribe to him. I've put his details in the description. The man is an absolute genius artist, and we are lucky to have him as our lead animator. Another quick example here of diegetic sound and its importance. This sort of thing can often cause headaches if we don't pay attention to that initial sound pass from the director. But it's as simple as adding the right amount of trace lines here, even though we can't see the gun firing. Again, simple, something that a viewer would never really look at, but it's the small details that bring a good show together. In fact, there are a lot of small details in this shootout scene especially. We actually needed to do a lot of research on the guns that Pomni, Jax, and Kinga are using. This ranged from how the gas and the flame release looked when firing to the gun mechanics and even how long the flares lasted when converted to frames per second. Our senior compa, Dean, he even provided some of his own homemade reference for this one. Look at him go. We actually had a similar effect in Gaslight District when Jack was shooting up the main cast, though there was a key difference here. Gaslight had a much more realistic, choppy flare effect, almost like stop motion. That's because we stuck to a more realistic time frame here in Gaslight, where a gun's flare actually only lasts a frame or two. I mean, it also suited the chaotic vibe of the scene. But we found that for this scene here in Digital Circus, we needed much more time for the viewer to actually see what's going on. So we extended the flare times to like 8 or 9 frames. I also want to point out Kinga's special move shot here. This was initially another head scratcher, but our compositor Jordan, the absolute mad lad, he went ahead and manually placed every tracer line, every impact element. He just smashed this out of the ballpark. You can check out his great insights on his YouTube channel below.
Pomni, got any ammo left?
I love this shot. Almost another blink and you'll miss it detail, but it's a great example of hitting 2D poses with our 3D characters. The animator here was Eliza, and you can see that she intentionally broke Pomni's rig and cheated the geometry to camera in order to hit this great, derpy mouth shape. Go and check out Eliza's breakdowns on more of her work in the description below. She's got a lot more where that came from. This one blew me away. When it comes to 3D animation, it's much easier to animate along an axis than it is on a sloping angle. So when our senior animator Austin was assigned with this shot, he came up with the brilliant idea to set up his own camera that filmed the outside of the pipe moving on an angle. Then he just projected that footage onto a plane outside the pipe to give the impression of it falling. This way he was able to easily animate Zubul, Gangle, and the props as they fell. Truly thinking outside the box with this one, Austin. Once again, he shows a lot of his work and his breakdowns on his socials. Go find him in the links below. This shot with Pomni is awesome. I don't need to tell you that. Look at that. The amount of camera work here, the animation, the sheer style. It's a huge standout. But one of the big reasons it works is because we drastically lowered the motion blur. It's something you wouldn't really notice, right? We realized that in order to actually see what's going on when everything's moving so fast, we really needed a high shutter speed. The animator, Jacob, then put his own smear lines in to really help direct what parts of the shot needed blurs and where we should be looking. Check out Jacob's works in the link below, he's got some great stuff too. Lastly, another small detail.
You reached out to me.
These shots are great examples of why each and every angle and setup needs to be analyzed and broken down. These props here in the background, they need to be specifically placed because Pomni needs to, interact with them later on. When we realized that Pomni needs to throw them, then we also had to make sure that they're present in all the backgrounds of any other camera angle where they can be seen. Like I said, small detail. But we're all about the small details here. We want you to stop and analyze every scene, every shot, every frame. You might even find some small details or clues that Goose has put there. So that's episode 6, and that's how we do things at Glitch. Please let me know if you have any more questions in the comments. I love talking about this stuff. But until next time, bye-bye.